Thank you for subscribing to our channel. Today is Tuesday, March 16, 2021. CNN report. U.S. and Japan express concern over China's aggressive actions during first trip by Biden's top diplomat. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken criticized China's threats to regional stability during bilateral talks in Tokyo on Tuesday, warning that the United States and Japan would push back if necessary. Blinken and U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin met with their counterparts in Tokyo for a series of bilateral talks and a joint 2+2 session, marking the first international trip by Biden cabinet officials.
BBC report. Moderna begins testing COVID-19 vaccine on babies and young children. Moderna is the first U.S. manufacturer to test its vaccine on infants. The company plans to enroll some 6,750 children in the U.S. and Canada for the trial. The inoculation of children and young people is seen as critical to achieving the level of herd immunity necessary to halt the pandemic. While the risk of children becoming seriously ill from the virus is smaller than for adults, there is still a risk of transmission, especially among teenagers.
Fox report. California cop under investigation over alleged Proud Boys membership. A Central California police officer is under investigation after images surfaced online purportedly showing him participating in a counter-protest alongside Proud Boys members over the weekend. The Fresno Police Department said Sunday it launched an internal affairs investigation after it first became aware of the photos and images depicting the officer purportedly marching with members of the Western chauvinist group outside the Tower Theater.
BBC report. COVID. Bahraini prince takes AstraZeneca vaccine to Everest without approval. Mohammed Hamid Mohammed Al Khalifa arrived in Nepal on Monday, with about 2,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine. Importing drugs into Nepal needs prior approval. The Bahraini embassy told Nepalese media that the prince's team wanted to donate the vaccine to villagers in the Gorkha district. On Tuesday, Thanishwar Guragan, a spokesperson for Seven Summits Trek, the company arranging Prince Al Khalifa's trip, told the Himalayan Times that after quarantining for 7 days, the group would travel to the Chumnarbi rural municipality in Gorkha district.
Fox report. Britain to expand nuclear warhead stockpile by over 40% as global threats rise. London. Britain will grow its nuclear warhead stockpile by more than 40% to ensure its security in a more risky global environment and as it faces new technological threats, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said on Tuesday. The country had previously been reducing its nuclear weapons stockpile, and in 2010, the government set a cap of 180 warheads for the mid-2020 period. Johnson scrapped the earlier limit and said the number would now rise to a maximum of 260.
Al Jazeera report. California governor, slammed for COVID performance, faces recall. In the week that Californians mark a year of lockdown living, California Governor Gavin Newsom is launching a vigorous campaign to defend his seat in a potential recall election. Newsom, a Democrat, has largely removed himself from commenting on the recall effort until now, focusing instead on his administration's work to reduce the spread of coronavirus and to ensure California's 40 million residents get their COVID-19 vaccinations.
Deutsche Welle report. France. MPs rally behind bill enshrining climate change protections in constitution. French members of parliament on Tuesday threw their support behind legislation that could enshrine climate change protections in the country's constitution. French President Emmanuel Macron has promised to hold a public referendum on the new constitutional clause if it passes both houses of parliament. The bill passed in the lower house of parliament, with the approval of 391 deputies and 47 against.
Al Jazeera report. U.S. says it is facing biggest migrant surges in 20 years. The United States is on pace to face more immigrants arriving at its southern border with Mexico than in 20 years, the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, said on Tuesday. DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said the number of arrivals has been on a steady rise since April 2020, and that the majority of migrant families and single adults are being turned away. We are on pace to encounter more individuals on the southwest border than we have in the last 20 years, Mayorkas said in a statement, adding that the majority of arrivals are being expelled under Title 42. a Trump-era provision that cites the pandemic as the basis to allow the swift expulsion of asylum seekers.
BBC report. Nebraska declares pro-meat day to rival Colorado's meatless day. Speaking from a butcher shop, Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts, a Republican, said Colorado's action was a direct attack on our way of life. He declared the 20th of March, the same day as Colorado's Meat Out Day, to be Meat on the Menu Day. Beef is the largest industry in Nebraska, he said. The state's agriculture industry accounts for 1 out of every 4 jobs, and ranchers in the state sell $12 billion, 8 pounds.
Deutsche Welle report. COVID helps Germany hit its 2020 climate goal. Germany slightly exceeded its national climate goal for 2020. The Federal Environment Agency, known as the UBA, announced on Tuesday. It was the largest reduction in emissions that the country, Europe's largest economy, has seen in 3 decades. Environment Minister Svenja Schulze said. Germany's greenhouse gas output has now fallen by a total of 40.8% since the 1990 levels, the baseline measurement for EU national emission reductions.
CNN report. College applications in pandemic year show deepening inequities in access to higher education. Applying to college is stressful in normal times. But this year, students felt the extra stress of having to deal with pandemic-related restrictions that made many of the usual steps, like working with high school counselors, visiting campuses, and in-person interviews, nearly impossible. College admissions officers say many students today aren't getting access to counselors to support them through the college application process and the financial aid application process, says Mamie Voigt, interim president at the Institute for Higher Education Policy.
Fox report. California man pleads guilty to firebombing Republican club. A California man accused of tossing a Molotov cocktail inside a women's Republican club office last year has pleaded guilty to charges against him, federal authorities said Monday. Carlos Espriu, 23, of Palm Desert, entered his plea via a Zoom hearing before a federal judge. He allegedly used a baseball bat to break the windows of the East Valley Republican Women Federated office in La Quinta on May 31, 2020, before lighting 3 Molotov cocktails.
CNN report. Washington Post. Army memo initially considered denying D.C.'s request for National Guard ahead of January 6. The U.S. Army initially considered denying a request from Washington, D.C.'s government for a National Guard deployment ahead of the January 6 rally that led to riots at the U.S. Capitol, according to a Washington Post report published Tuesday. An internal draft memo obtained by the Post argued the U.S. military shouldn't be required to help law enforcement with traffic and crowd control unless more than 100,000 demonstrators were expected on the National Mall that day, the newspaper reported.
Al Jazeera report. U.S. focuses on denuclearization of North Korea as ICBMs loom. North Korea might begin flight testing and improved design for its intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, in the near future, the head of the U.S. military's Northern Command said on Tuesday, a move that would sharply increase tensions between Pyongyang and Washington. The North Korean regime has also indicated that it is no longer bound by the unilateral nuclear and ICBM testing moratorium announced in 2018, suggesting that Kim Jong-un may begin flight testing and improved ICBM design in the near future, Air Force General Glenn Van Herk said in written testimony before the Senate Armed Services Committee.
Fox report. Putin critic Alexei Navalny says he's been placed in a real concentration camp. Russian opposition leader and Putin critic Alexei Navalny is describing the prison colony where he is being held as a real concentration camp, where swearing is prohibited and he is woken up by guards every hour. Navalny, who now appears to have a shaven head, made the comments about the facility in Pokrov in a post that surfaced on his Instagram account. I have to admit that the Russian prison system was able to surprise me, he wrote, according to a translation of the post.
CNN report. Prince Philip leaves hospital following heart surgery. Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, has left King Edward VII's hospital in London 1 month after he was first admitted. The 99-year-old, who had heart surgery earlier this month, is in good spirits after being discharged Tuesday, a royal source told CNN. He has now returned to Windsor Castle. according to a statement from Buckingham Palace. Philip, who was first admitted to King Edward VII's Hospital on February 16, had been recovering at the private facility after having heart surgery at St. Bartholomew's Hospital.
Deutsche Welle report. German and Israeli presidents discuss Middle East and the coronavirus. German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier welcomed his Israeli counterpart, Reuven Rivlin, to his residence at Schloss Bellevue in Berlin on Tuesday. According to Steinmeier's office, the two discussed the current state of affairs in the Middle East and Germany's relationship with Israel. Moreover, they discussed the pressing issue of the coronavirus pandemic and global vaccine distribution. After Tuesday's meeting, Steinmeier praised Israel's success in the pandemic, congratulating Rivlin.
Thank you for watching 5 p.m. recap. To be notified, you can subscribe our channel and activate the bell.